the regional level, and because clearly science must always guide our action, and I think in this area it is important to repeat it again and again. As you might remember, UNOC 3 also convened more than 2,000 scientists from around the world during the One Ocean Science Congress. In the recommendations presented to heads of state and governments, the scientists called to increase the protection of marine areas, to end plastic pollution, and to promote safe and equitable ocean-based climate solutions. We have to be humble in the face of scientific expertise. We have to respect the warnings from science and use them in the ground for local and global actions and policy making. I just wanted to finish, to act at the global level, it is important to rely on local communities and stakeholders, which are often members of regional sea conventions. At UNOC 3, the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition brought together mayors, governors and officials of cities and coastal regions, as well as representatives of small island developing states, for the launch of global mobilization aimed at addressing the impacts of climate change and sea level rise. And I think it is very important to keep that in mind. And to conclude, the implementation of our collective commitments requires science, resources, and expertise. That is why France and UNEP supported the work of the new platform, the International Platform for Ocean Sustainability, also called IPOS. This tool is labeled by the UN Decade for Ocean Science and plays a role of interconnection between the local and the global in order to help countries at their request to implement the international ocean commitments taken in various fora. It is, of course, at your disposal for your good use. Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here with you and with such important ministers here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Very important that science policy link that you mentioned, and making sure that decisions are made with the right scientific basis. And it's very important. I think those three elements that you mentioned on science, resource, and expertise is a very key element that we need to continue to strengthen for the benefit of the countries. Countries have got a lot of data and scientists, not only on the national level, but also at the local level, which we are able to tap into. So it's a very good segue, because now we have Minister Mary May, who was the chair of the 13th symposium of the WIOMSA, the Western Indian Ocean Marine Scientists Association. And Mary May, the role of science is extremely important, as we heard 7 weeks ago in WIOMSA in Mombasa. And we wanted to learn a little bit more from the Seychelles experience when it comes to using marine spatial planning. They are supported by science. They bring about a lot of partnerships and stakeholders. So for us, it would be very important, how do you use marine spatial planning to guide policy for marine conservation and sustainable development? And what are the key lessons learned in the marine spatial planning processes that you can share, and how does that get translated into sharing with other countries of the Nairobi Convention? Please.
Thank you very much, Albert. Good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues. It's a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to speak on this panel. Of course, you know, the ocean is very dear to my heart, but also to Seychelles, being a small island state. So for us, I think before I dive into that regional space, just maybe allow me to contextualize the key role that for us Marine Spatial Plan has been able to do. So in Seychelles, the Marine Spatial Plan really was used as a strategic tool that would bring in together all of the partners, but also fill in that gap as it relates to science. We've heard just now the importance that science has to play in the decisions that we take for ocean governance. And in Seychelles, we have really taken this and run with it throughout the years. So our approach, really, we balance conservation, livelihoods, climate change adaptation, and community work that's guided through the consultation stage that we did. So when we started the process some years ago, we quickly realized that we had a lot of gaps in terms of data. And so a lot of our efforts have been trying to fill those gaps. And what the Regional Seas program, for example, the Nairobi Convention, which in our case is really the anchor, it helps us to align ourselves with those broader regional coherence in terms of the strategic vision of the region, but also in terms of the work and data sets that are already available at a bigger scale, so which we can then bring forward at home and support. And similarly, based on our expertise and our experience that we've been able to accrue over the years, we have been able to also then bring back to the level of the region. And this has, of course, inspired other countries, and we have also embarked on a regional MSP through the Nairobi Convention, which is really speaking to to how global commitments can be linked a lot to local actions, local commitments, and local leadership, which Seychelles has been able to bring. And now as we move forward, so in the Western Indian Ocean region, we're very fortunate that we have such a strong science partner in WIOMSA, who helps with a lot of the capacity building and the scientific work that is helping us to make decisions. And in the symposium that we had a couple of weeks ago now, we could see the amount of research, the amount of potential, and of course the amount of capacity that currently resides in the region, and how we can bring that to scale to actually bring actions at a much, much higher level. And when we speak about BBNJ, I think that there is a very critical role that Regional Seas program can play, because it is no single country responsibility. It is about shared governance, and through those Regional Seas platforms, you are able to tap into experience, capacity, and all of the expertise that exist at the level of the region. So I think the Western Indian Ocean region is definitely a model that we could carry across if we really want to see the scale and impact for all Regional Seas programs and for ocean governance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I think it's very important what you bring on the regional ocean governance, which is very embodied in the entire Nairobi Convention. You mentioned something that very much resonated with me, and it's the making that link between conservation and livelihoods. At the end of the day, it's about the local communities and the people who depend on the marine and coastal natural resources, and how are they able to benefit. Because at the end of the day, they become guardians of those marine ecosystems. We always need to have them in mind. Minister Samola, thank you so much for hosting us a month and a half ago in Jamaica for the COP18 of the Cartagena Convention. So also our condolences for the losses that we had under Hurricane Melissa. Minister, getting into that kind of element of the livelihoods, how do you see Jamaica integrating the work of the Cartagena Convention with the global commitments, such as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, in particular the 30 by 30 targets, the BBNJ Agreement, while advancing on the blue economy and the elements about climate resilience, which at the moment is so present in Jamaica? And how do we unlock the blue economy financing opportunities?
Thank you for those questions. Allow me to acknowledge Susan Gardner, a good friend of Jamaica as well, good friend of the ocean, and of course His Excellency Peter Thompson, good friend of Jamaica, good friend of the ocean. Jamaica has been on the front line of the triple planetary crises that we experience. There is no element of it that hasn't affected us, and these effects have been extreme. We see it certainly with terrestrial matters, but certainly within our marine environment. It is why the regional seas programs are so critically important, but it's why that we have taken a glass half full view of the current situation, despite going through something like Hurricane Melissa this year and Hurricane Beryl last year, and 2 other tropical storms the years before. It's because we are under those front lines and we're seeing that impact that we have to have some positivity with how we look at it. It's why we're particularly happy that we were able to ratify the BBNJ Agreement. We're particularly supportive, certainly as members of the High Ambition Coalition, for the 30 by 30 targets, and we're very happy with the Kunming-Montreal Agreement. We're working actively towards our own commitments in that regard. We're also particularly happy with the steps that were taken by the WTO in relation to fishing subsidies. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there's recognition globally in the need for stronger ocean governance. And we're seeing that certainly at the regional level, where CARICOM, which is our negotiating bloc, our trade bloc, is actively working on an updated policy framework for ocean governance and ocean management. We're also seeing, I think, very interesting points of collaboration even before you get into the governance, where you have the Caribbean Biological Corridor, which is mapping migratory species, is mapping the impact of climate change between Puerto Rico, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and indeed Jamaica. I think that's a very unique initiative that ignores geopolitical divisions and simply gets down to the science and the sort of protection that you need. But we're also seeing greater collaborations, and from our friends certainly to the west and to the south, certainly with shared MEAs being announced by Costa Rica and Colombia and other nations in the area. So there's a recognition that there has to be collaboration, and I think that has to be the first pillar, and that sets the basis of what I think the Cartagena Convention tried to set out, which is that we have to work together, we have to collaborate, but we have to acknowledge the science if we're to protect species and protect against further biodiversity loss. The reality is the world hasn't done well over the last 50 years in protecting against biodiversity loss. So the foundations of the Cartagena Convention are certainly supported by Jamaica. Jamaica is investing heavily, not just in its capacity from a regulatory standpoint, and we do expect to ratify the SPA protocol, Chris, in a matter of months, certainly before I speak in the Parliament sectoral debate, before Chris rakes me over the coals. But it's not ratification for ratification's sake. One of the things that we've been very clear about in Jamaica, in the Caribbean region, is that protection has to actually be met with protection. Meaning you have to have the capacity, you have to have wardens, you have to have your Coast Guard, you have to have your Navy, because there are actors that are not interested in our environmental targets. And for a small island developing state like Jamaica with a relatively small economy, unlocking our blue economic potential is critical if we're to be able to invest at the rate that we must if we're to protect our seas, if we're to protect the BBNJ agreement and to move it from paper to bringing it alive. So there has to be first regional cooperation, which I think you're seeing in many areas. Certainly in the Caribbean, there's some bright signs of hope. But there then has to be the budgetary commitment fueled by economic gain. We are also members of the high-level panel that's on a sustainable ocean economy, which for us, that has to be the pillar. There has to be economic activity, but that economic activity has to be conducted in such a manner that is indeed sustainable, but funds the very protection that you want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, and thank you for giving us that perspective of the whole of government approach. We're not only looking into the environmental sector for the protection of the marine and coastal environment, but we also need to make sure that we make the connectivity with the Ministers of Finance, Minister of Energy, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. I think that it's an integrated approach, what we are really looking forward to. Excellencies, we have another panel coming up, and I'm already given the the 2-minute warning, so we need to begin to wrap up. But I do want to give each one of you the opportunity to share with us maybe a 1-minute reflection into how we can move from that collective commitment that we are seeing in so many forums, and how do we bring it into the national level implementation. So if we can start with you, Ambassador.
Thank you. In 1 minute, it's very difficult. But I think the main thing is to understand that we are completely different in our countries, but we are facing the same big challenges. So it is important for us to share the need to act, and after to share the experiences, the skills, in order to help each other to implement on the ground. And what you said for me is fundamental. If you agree that economy is linked to protection, you have everybody on board. The problem we are facing as ministers on the ground is when we want to protect areas, when we want to deal with climate, environmental and pollution issues, it is with the economic world, people thinking that it will cause problems for them or for the development growth. So it is very important for everybody to showcase some concrete examples of the win-win aspect of protecting oceans and biodiversity. And if we do that, if we have the economic world on board, we will succeed.
So, our Prime Minister Ambassador has a saying. He says sustainable economic growth cannot be achieved on the back of environmental degradation, and prosperity cannot be steeped in pollution. If we accept that as sort of guiding philosophical principle, we understand why coordination is so incredibly important. We understand why we have to break down boundaries, and not national boundaries of jurisdiction, but sometimes our own bureaucratic boundaries. One of the steps Jamaica has taken was taken a number of years ago, but we find it particularly useful, and colleagues may reflect on it as well. We have a National Council for Oceans and Coastal Zone Management, which is a council of the cabinet, which by law and regulation forces our agencies to interact in a particular way. So yes, the Fisheries Division may have custody of the WTO conversations. The National Environment Protection Agency may have water quality. The Port Authority has shipping and the Maritime Authority. But they're forced to interact on a quarterly basis and share reports that feed into the national strategy to ensure that we have a sustainable ocean economy.
Thank you. Minister Jeremy?
Lucky last. I think for me, the take-home is one that is far more simpler, and it comes down to the reason, le raison d'être, of why we have to really take strides in ocean governance, because we all agree that there is really one ocean, regardless of where we are in the world, and that that the ocean sustains all of us, provides for everything that we need. And if at the very minimal we can agree for this, then on platforms here such at UNEA, the focus is really on critical, practical actions that we all take back home as countries, as regions, to make things happen. The problem with a lot of the platforms sometimes is that the commitments are made, but then the actions don't follow through. And I think the urgency that surrounds our oceans right now means that we just cannot continue to talk about conservation of the ocean, sustainable blue economies, but really moving forward with them. So some key words for me: cooperation, shared ownership and governance, but definitely bringing in the capacities, the financing, the human support that really helps us to have those concrete actions on the ground. And for me, that is the ultimate take home. And if that's the approach that we all take, I think the strides will speak for themselves. I thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. So colleagues, unfortunately we have to wrap up this initial session. I would like to ask a big round of applause for all of our excellencies for their contributions. And I ask you to take your seats again. And let me invite my colleague Heidi Sabelli, who is going to be leading us on the second session on strengthening ocean governance for a sustainable blue economy transition.
This one is on, yes. Excellent. Great, thank you, Alberto. And thank you, previous panelists. Excellent insights. Excellencies and colleagues, we'll now focus on the second panel of today's event. It focuses on strengthening ocean governance through comprehensive, inclusive, and science-based approaches to enable a sustainable blue economy. We'll have the privilege of having 3 panelists. We have Ms. Susania Avila, youth representative of the Gunayala indigenous peoples of Panama. If you could please join us on stage. We also have His Excellency Mr. Mosese Bulitavo, Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Fiji, that I understand will be joining us shortly, as well as Mr. Uduwawala, Secretary to the Ministry of Environment, Sri Lanka. If you could please join us on stage as well. We will take the opportunity of highlighting tools and best practices that improve policy coherence, transparency, and accountability, while ensuring alignment between environmental sustainability and socioeconomic development. Susanna?
Hello? Ms. Avila, drawing from your work in marine conservation and community engagement, and as a young indigenous Guna woman from Panama, what approaches have proven most successful in aligning biodiversity conservation with socioeconomic goals while integrating traditional knowledge to support a healthier and resilient ocean? And I understand you give interventions in Spanish, and our colleague here will translate into English. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me for me to the moment and speak in Spanish. Muy buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Dios les bendiga principalmente. Mi nombre es Susana Ávila. Soy una joven indígena de la comarca de Gunayala, en Panamá. Y hoy he tenido la gran oportunidad de trabajar de cerca en conservación marina y participación comunitaria. Cuando me preguntan principalmente acerca de cómo hemos enfocado de manera exitosa alinear la conservación de la biodiversidad con los objetivos socioeconómicos, siempre regresa a mi memoria el agua en Gunayala o el mar. Para nosotros los gunas, el océano y principalmente los corales no solo son un recurso o medios de subsistencia, son parte de nuestra identidad, de nuestra historia familiar, cultural y espiritual. Crecí escuchando a mis abuelos hablar de respeto hacia la naturaleza y esas enseñanzas han guiado cada paso en mi camino a la conservación.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you. She's Susana Avila, a young indigenous woman from the Gunayala region in Panama. And well, I'm speaking on her behalf. I have had the opportunity to work closely in marine conservation and community participation. When I am asked which approaches have been most successful in aligning biodiversity conservation with socioeconomic objectives, my memory always returns to the sea in Gunayala. For us, the Gunas, the ocean and the corals are not just resources or means of subsistence. They are part of our identity, of our family, cultural and spiritual history. I grew up listening to my grandparents speak of respect for nature, and those teachings have guided every step of my path in conservation.
Desde mi experiencia he aprendido que los procesos que realmente funcionan son aquellos que colocan a las personas en el centro, no solo como beneficiarios, sino como principales protagonistas. Nuestros conocimientos tradicionales no son ideas del pasado, son herramientas reales y vigentes para manejar el territorio de manera sostenible. Cuando estos saberes se integran en los proyectos, las acciones dejan de sentirse impuestas y se convierten en prácticas que las comunidades conocen como propias.
From my experience, I have learned that the processes that truly work are those that place people at the center, not only as beneficiaries, but as protagonists. Our traditional knowledge is not an idea of the past. It is real and current tool for managing territory sustainably. When this knowledge is integrated into projects, actions stop feeling imposed and become practices that the community recognizes as its own.
También he visto que la conservación debe entenderse como una gran oportunidad, no como una limitación. En las diferentes comunidades, cuando explicamos que un arrecife saludable significa más peces, mayor seguridad alimentaria y mejores oportunidades económicas, principalmente los jóvenes, la participación es más activa. Entendemos que cuidar el océano es también cuidar nuestro futuro.
I have also seen that conservation must be understood as an opportunity, not as a limitation. In different communities, when we explain that a healthy reef means more fish, greater food security, and better economic opportunities, especially for young people, participation grows. We understand that caring for the ocean is also caring for our future.
Un ejemplo importante de esta gran integración es nuestra participación en la ley número 304 del 31 de mayo del 2022, que crea el Comité Nacional de Arrecifes Coralinos en Panamá y promueve la participación de la sociedad civil. Para nosotros, ser el primer pueblo indígena en formar parte de este gran comité es un paso histórico, porque establece un marco de colaboración que reconoce principalmente a los grupos indígenas como actores claves en la protección de los arrecifes. Esta ley fortalece nuestra capacidad de gestión y refleja la convicción de que la conservación solo es efectiva cuando se incorpora las voces de quienes viven y dependen del mar.
An important example of this integration is our participation in Law 304 of May 31st, 2022, which creates the National Coral Reef Committee of Panama and promotes civil society participation. For us, being the first indigenous people to be part of this committee is a historic step because it establishes a framework of collaboration that recognizes indigenous groups as key actors in reef protection. This law strengthens our management capacity and reflects the conviction that conservation is only effective when it incorporates the voices of those who live in and depend directly on the sea.
Otro ejemplo significativo proviene de nuestros propios líderes comunitarios, los Ailas. En varias islas, incluida mi comunidad, se han creado normas claras. Nadie puede extraer ni dañar los arrecifes. Y quienes lo hacen enfrentarán grandes sanciones económicas. Esta decisión, basada en nuestra cosmovisión y el respeto ancestral por la madre tierra, ha tenido un impacto muy positivo. Hoy la gente ya no utiliza los corales para relleno de las islas, como ocurría antes. En su lugar, buscamos métodos alternativos con materiales biodegradables. La comunidad ha entendido que los corales son vida y que protegerlo es un legado para las próximas generaciones.
Another significant example comes from our community leaders, the Sailas. In several islands, including my own community, clear rules have been decreed. No one may extract or damage corals, and those who do face economic sanctions. This decision, based on our worldview and ancestral respect for Mother Earth, has had a very positive impact. Today, people no longer use corals to fill the islands as they did before. Instead, alternative methods with biodegradable materials are sought. The community has understood that corals are life and that protecting them is a legacy for future generations.
Estas experiencias me han enseñado que los enfoques más exitosos son aquellas que constituyen puentes entre la ciencia y la cultura, entre la conversación y el desarrollo, entre el conocimiento. Ya tiene muchas de estas claves para un manejo responsable. Solo necesitamos fortalecerlas y seguir practicándolas. Más que ver el mar como una fuente de ingreso, debemos verlo como una fuente de vida. Vida para nosotros y para nuestras futuras generaciones. Muchas gracias.
These experiences have taught me that the most successful approaches are those that build bridges between science and culture, between conservation and development, between the knowledge of our elders and the energy of youth. When conservation is linked both to our cultural identity and to the economic well-being of families, it becomes a collective, profound, and sustainable effort. In Gunayala, we have demonstrated this. Protecting the ocean is protecting our way of life. As a young indigenous woman and active participant in these processes, I am convinced that a healthier and more resilient ocean will only be possible if we work together. Communities, traditional authorities, youth, institutions, and external allies. Our culture already contains many of the keys to responsible management. We only need to strengthen them and continue applying them. More than seeing the sea as a source of income, we must see it as a source of life for us and for our future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Avila, and especially thinking around the part where you indicate that conservation must be seen as an opportunity and not as a limitation, truly. We move to Secretary. Sri Lanka has been a strong advocate for pollution-related resolutions, particularly on plastic and nutrients, while hosting SAGACEP, of course, in the South Asian seas and promoting ocean governance. How is the country addressing these pollution challenges and integrating them into a broader ocean governance?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the invitation, and it is a great honor to be here as a panelist. And strengthening and harmonizing ocean governance as we collectively navigate towards a resilient future by 2030. As an island nation at the heart of the Indian Ocean, the ocean for us is not a distant frontier. It is our identity, our economy, and our cultural and shared responsibility. So I will tell that we are bound with the international conventions and other related activities. First one, I would like to say we are a part of United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and also Paris Agreement and Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and also Copenhagen Declaration on Sustainable Blue Economy. And within this framework, Sri Lanka promotes sustainable blue investments, marine investment plan, and climate financing strategy as well. And also we have programs for mangrove restoration and seagrass conservation. And also we have a strong engagement in the South Asian Cooperative Environment Program. It's called SAGACEP. It's the South Asian countries are engaged in with the long term. So we have that support as well. And also we are the chair of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, and it is planned to have the maritime security, the sustainable blue economy, disaster risk reduction, trade facilitation, and strengthening regional cooperation. And also we are the focal point for the working group on maritime safety and security, and also the coordinating the country with other institution as well. And also we have, as I said earlier, we have the program for the mangrove restoration programs, and also seagrass mapping and conservation, and trans-boundary cooperation as well. So therefore, as you said, we are very well committed to this World Ocean Governance Framework to get into that. The Sri Lanka approaches the challenges of plastic and nutrient pollution with a deep sense of responsibility, recognizing their direct impact on the ocean health, food security, and the livelihood of coastal communities, we have strengthened our national legal policy frameworks, including the Marine Pollution Preventing Act. Now, in recent time, we are going to amend the act in very strong way to prevent this marine pollution around the country. We are an island nation, and also we have hit about this, as you can remember the incident expressed by the incident, and also we are implementing a comprehensive national action plan on plastic waste management while advancing extended producer responsibility to accelerate the transition to circular economy models. We are integrating land-based source of pollution into our ocean governance architecture through integrated coastal zone management, marine spatial planning, and watershed-based approaches that link waste management, wastewater treatment, and sustainable agriculture with marine conservation objectives. This integrated approach is essential to achieving coherence across the ocean, biodiversity, and climate agendas. Sri Lanka reaffirms its commitment to strengthen the international cooperation, inclusive governance, and evidence-based action to safeguard our ocean for present and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary. Truly impressive list, and we've worked a lot with Sri Lanka and SACEP over the last years through the Global Program of Action and other UNEP-related programs. I'm also great pleasure. Thank you for joining Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Fiji, Dr. Sivendra Michel. So, welcome again. And from a Pacific perspective, what steps can ensure policy coherence across ocean and biodiversity agendas through inclusive, science-based governance? And how can the regional Seas foster collaboration on knowledge exchange for its sustainable blue economy?
Thank you, Excellencies, Your Excellency Ambassador Thompson, and colleagues, distinguished delegates. Very good afternoon to you all, and first of all, allow me to apologize for being here late, as we had a clash. I am not the minister. The minister is in another bilateral event. As you understand that Fiji is also progressing at UNEA 7, a coral reef resolution that is very important to citizens at large, as well as trying to make it a milestone at this General Assembly, at this Environmental Assembly, that it be the first resolution that that receives consensus and it gets passed on to the plenary. So just for us, I think, first of all, there are a couple of facts to acknowledge. One is that the Pacific Island, small island developing states are the world's largest region that covers the world's largest climate regulator, which is the Pacific Ocean. We are covered, small island nations covered by vast ocean spaces, and we have increasing challenges on ocean governance. However, the Pacific has been a leader in this space, has been a leader since the first UNOC conference, which Fiji was a part of. They also are part of the high-level Oceans Champions, and Ambassador Thompson himself is from Fiji, which we are very proud of, and he is the Oceans Envoy, always advising us on this regard. So as a region that's very much reliant, where our cultural ties, our ocean stewardship lies very much on the use of marine ocean spaces, we have been quite progressive in how ocean governance works for us, particularly in achieving 30 by 30, ratification of BBNJ and so forth. And so a lot of this work is guided by our sustainable, our 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, which is our overarching kind of governance framework for the 14 Pacific Island seats, and which is implemented through the Pacific Islands Forum, or the Forum Secretariat, which our leaders have endorsed, all the prime ministers of the 14 Pacific Island countries. And so under this framework, we talk about specific areas and pathways in which ocean governance could be strengthened. And one of those is the interlinkages between the MEAs and how blue economy work spans across multiple multilateral environmental agreements, and building that cohesion or understanding that cohesion has been really a fundamental step for small island developing states at large, and in particular for PSEADs. And so we have been doing a lot of work on regional marine spatial planning. We've also done a lot of work on national marine spatial planning on our EEZs. And now, right now, we are a region that has progressed really far ahead with the work that is supposed to be planned out with the entry into force on the BBNJ Agreement. And as you know that a lot of these discussions that have been happening in working groups and so forth, Pacific has been pushing at the most extreme end on a proper governance mechanism for areas beyond our national jurisdiction because of the shared spaces. Domestically, Fiji has been leading a lot on regional spaces and has been a regional leader. We are probably the first country in the region to finalize our blue economy framework. It would have been finalized if we didn't have back-to-back COPs. And a large part of that is that, you know, most of these things come and sit with the ministers and the permanent secretaries, which we need to review and have it passed through cabinet. So this is currently in the pipeline, as well as our first ever marine spatial regulation, which is also in the pipeline. The last point that I wanted to make in terms of coherence and work, I think I will speak on the AOC's perspective. I don't think so the world needs to look any further. The AOC's consortium, or the membership of the AOC's countries, and the work that they have done in the Caribbean on ocean finance, on ocean governance in the Pacific is a building block for other countries in the world to learn from. And so I strongly urge that larger developed countries and other countries that are going down these pathways to look towards SEEDs and AOCs on how we have been looking at the building blocks and looking at the multiple aspects of governance frameworks or ocean governance frameworks that is very critical. And that includes capacity building, having institutional systems in place, as well as having proper policies and guidance that will help us maneuver through the complexities of large ocean spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, distinguished panelists. It's been great to hear your insights and your thoughtful contributions. We will now, thank you so much, and we'll step down from, but a final applaud here for the panelists. Before we invite Ambassador Peter Thompson up to the podium as well to deliver closing remarks for this side event, where he will also reflect on what has been said and exchanged during this session. This is almost like an ocean breeze. It's very nice. Ambassador Thompson, welcome.
I guess. Good afternoon, I think it is, yes. So many friends in the audience, lovely to see your faces, new people as well, good to see you. Hey, I'm a grandfather, as most of you know, and that's my preoccupation in life, trying to do the right thing for my 4 granddaughters. I'm also a feminist. But the central message is that we're putting terrible burden. When I say we, I mean our generation, last 2 or 3 generations, are putting a terrible burden on our children and grandchildren in terms of what is coming at them in their lifetimes. When I hold my 5-year-old granddaughter in my arms every morning when I'm home, which is not often, I look into her eyes and I think, God, when you are my age, the world is going to be on fire if we continue on our current trajectory. There will be no coral reefs. That one will be long gone. But there will be plague, there will be wars, etc., etc. So it's a heavy note on which to start my remarks about regional ocean governance, but it's definitely linked, because everything we do now should be aimed at somehow bending that curve, which we have done. You know, it was at 4 degrees when we were in Paris at the climate COP. It's now down into somewhere around 3 degrees with good prospects of getting down in the mid-2s. But, you know, 1.5 to stay alive. We're still way beyond where we should be. So regional seas programs, you know, put all your work into that context, because that's where we are. You know, the WMO, who are not evil people, you know, they're not trying to put a con job on the world. They're just the weather people, you know, the people who go out and measure the rain each day, you know, what the temperature is, and send all that information to Geneva, where we collate it into reports to say what's happening to the world's climate, right? This is truth, right? This is where we get our truth from our multilateral organizations like the WMO. So what does the WMO say? They say that last year, CO2 in the atmosphere spiked at the highest levels ever recorded, 2024. And why did that happen? Because of fossil fuel emissions, and because of wildfires, you can see the link there, of course, and because the carbon sinks like the forests and the peatlands I add from a meeting I've just come from. Peat is so important. And the ocean, their ability to absorb that CO2 is weakening. They're basically saying, enough, we can't do it anymore. So that is the, you know, cause for deep, deep concern, obviously. We've got a planet in crisis when it comes to biodiversity loss. So, you know, regional seas, there's no business as usual about this. I know you've been there for 50 years, which is fantastic. It shows that you're an effective program, the fact that you've been there for 50 years. But, you know, got to up the game. Got to up the game. And I've been saying for some time now that I think the Regional Seas Program has fantastic opportunity now with all these new tools that we're bringing in. BBNJ High Seas Treaty. You know, that's got to be big for the Regional Seas Program. Sustainable ocean plans, they're proliferating now, thanks to the good work of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. And you know, I can see Jamaica sitting there, I can see Fiji sitting there. These are countries which France was here, which sit on that panel. This is 19 serving heads of government sit on that panel. And thanks to their great work, sustainable ocean plans are now proliferating around the world. So again, regional seas, you have a big role to play in supporting that. I do want to recognize also that you are comprehensive. You know, you cover 18 regions, and most of you are underpinned by these legal frameworks that you have. So, you know, you're powerful entities in this whole consideration of how we're going to govern the ocean so that this decline doesn't continue. When I say decline, I haven't said the mantra today. So here's the mantra: no healthy planet without a healthy ocean, and the ocean's health is currently measurably in decline. Take all the indices, from pollution to overfishing to acidification to warming. All the indices show decline, and in most cases, accelerating decline. So again, wake-up call to the regional seas programs and to UNEP. We have to do more, or we are going to make that horrible future for our children and grandchildren to which I was referring. I think, you know, I don't want to be too bleak here. Humanity is responding, and I would say especially post-2015, as somebody who is involved in getting SDG 14 into place, I can say that prior to 2015, prior to the Paris Climate Agreement, prior to the SDGs, we really were in a bit of a wasteland. And I say that as an ambassador of a small island developing state, and the fights that we were going through to get SDG 14 into existence. Same problem when we started the UN Ocean Conference system. A lot of, you know, the big powers in particular did not want that, but we brought it in, and look what's happened since. You know, there's just this flowering of appreciation of what's required in the ocean. Okay, we're not doing enough, but we're now, nobody can hide behind a veil of pretended innocence that they never knew that the ocean was in decline. Anybody who says that to you is just plain dreamland. So there's been this great flowering. I mean, look at the UN Ocean Conference in Nice. You know, over 60 heads of government came to that, over 100 ministers. You know, the outflow from it has been enormous. You know, we've now ratified BBNJ High Seas Treaty. We've now got the WTO Fisheries Subsidies Agreement, first part of it, ratified, putting that into existence. You know, I think of the ICJ opinion, and all these things are sort of riding this tide which has come out of UNOC 3 in Nice and will carry on through to UNOC 4, which will be in Korea in 2028. So what are we going to do in the regional seas programs? I think we've heard clear affirmation today from the panels, excellent panels, I may say, that the Regional Seas Program has to continue to be comprehensive and inclusive and science-based in its approach to governance. We've got the affirmation that you know, links to biodiversity conservation and the sustainable blue economy outcomes in national implementation of 30 by 30 target have to be there. And the basic principle is that when we establish MPAs under BBNJ or indeed within our EEZs, we're not just protecting species, we're safeguarding blue carbon ecosystems and enhancing the well-being of our coastal communities. So the clear challenge to member states present is support your regional seas programs. They've proved their worthiness, but they have a lot more potential to deliver in this fight that we have to restore a healthy ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sampson. A warm thank you for coming. I would like to thank you all for joining our event this afternoon. I think we have very rich, inspiring remarks, and I think there are a lot of work now to do, roll up the sleeves and go out and ensure our sustainable ocean by 2030. And with that, I thank you for coming, and I'd like to invite you to join us immediately now after the event. We have some refreshment and light lunch outside. We have many regional seas coordinators in the audience, many governments and partners, so please join us there. So thank you very much, and successful in the year.